Hi everyone, I wanted to talk to you now about the research questions. There'll be one of these for each module, which means there'll be 2 per week. And they're broken into 2 parts. A lot of this information is on the syllabus, so I definitely want to direct you to the syllabus. But let me talk to you a little bit about the rationale behind them and a little bit about how to complete them well. So the research questions are probably going to be the most helpful for you as you think about your final research project, the course research project that you're working on. So what you want to think about, the question that you've chosen, right, for the course research project, which you've already chosen one, and now you want to do the reading. So now do the assigned reading, which you can find on Blackboard, of course, and it's in the book. Be careful, again, that you get the right book. So you do the reading, you've got your research question in mind, and you have that in mind as you're reading it, right? Yeah, and so that question might be different depending on which research question you've chosen. If you've chosen the one about, what's missing in the course, what would you're saying, okay, well, what's in here? What am I getting from this? Right, and then you're writing your research question on that reading or one of those readings that you've read, or maybe more than one of them. Right, but you're saying, this reading says this, here's what I'm getting from it. Okay, and now here's your research question, right? So you referred, the research questions require you to refer to the text. You've got to refer to the text. Now you've got to write a question, and that question should be a question that you would answer in your research project. Right? So you're asking the question. So let's take the. Let's see. I'm going to do one off the top of my head now, which is not going to be as good as the ones that you do. But let me think. There's a reading that we do about ethno-nationalism and how it's been like a success in Europe. Right? That we do that at the end, towards the end. And so one of the things he says is, the reason why conflict's gone away in Europe, the reason why we don't have too much conflict anymore in Europe, is not because of a transnational European Union, right? But it's actually a result, at least in part, of the partitioning of Europe into, where every distinct nation gets its own nation state. So we don't have to fight anymore because we've already got our own nation states. Right? A lot of the fighting in the past, he says, was because you had sort of subjected nations within states or within empires that wanted to have a nation state of their own and make and have all the good positions in government themselves. All right, so that's what caused conflict when that went away, because everybody got their own state. Now we don't have conflict, right? So that's sort of his argument. So you could read that. You could take that's an element of his argument, one particular part of his argument. So you could kind of highlight that in your research question. You would say, Muller says, and then something along the lines of what I just said. All right, now I'm going to ask a question about that thing. And that question is going to help me with my research project. Now, let's say my research project, which one have I chosen? Let's say I've chosen the one about, does international relations equip a cadre of civilians to be able to be qualified to, okay, this is not going to be a good question now. So the first question that pops into my head is too broad, right? The first question that pops into my head is this one, is like, okay, because you can ask this about everything now, but the first one that pops into my head is not a good one, right? But we're moving towards, and let's see if we move towards a better one. So how does Muller, how does knowing, right, no, I'm moving towards a better one. Okay, when I start to write it down, it gets better. All right, what particular problems, either in Europe or in the rest of the world, see, I'm typing now as I'm saying it, in Europe or the rest of the world, does this help civilian policymakers solve, right? This knowledge of, right? Should civilian policymakers advocate for national segregation on other continents too, right? In Asia or in Africa or in South America or in North America? We think of probably, to think that other countries would be advocating policies for North America probably gets our backs up, but of course that's what we're doing in the rest of the world. So, which is why maybe international relations is an American discipline. But anyway, So that would be a decent question. Now, here's what you would do now. So you would submit that question. That's your research question. That's quite a good one, right? You get full marks for that. But that shouldn't be the end of it. Now you should take that research question, right? Today, you've handed it in, you get the points for that. You've got to hand that in separately. That's worth 15% of your, we're going to do 2 of those every week. Now you're going to go off and you're going to write in your big main paper. You're going to introduce that sort of question, and you're going to find an answer for it, right? You're going to go and do some research. You're going to go on Google Scholar. You're going to go on the ASU library. You're going to look for papers because, of course, if I've just thought of it there, right, and if you've just thought of it, the likelihood is somebody's written something about it, right? Somebody else has probably thought of it. If you find something where nobody's written anything about it, then you're at the cutting edge of your discipline, right? And that's great. But trying to find something that somebody's written something about that, no doubt. Certainly Muller's written something about it, right? And so anyway, so you find a couple of other papers and you start writing the answer to that, right? Is it useful for civilian policymakers to think about the world in these terms, right? Of each nation having its own state, right? Has it worked in the past? Do people think it will work in the future? What sort of theories? What's a counter theory to Muller? Write those down. Write 500 words of that in your big main paper. Now you're making progress, right? You do that twice a week. Now we're building our paper, all right? Our big paper. So that's how these research questions should help your main paper. That's how to do. That's what sort of questions I'm looking for. That's how to do that. There'll be a rubric on there for you as well. The one thing I should mention in sort of details wise, and again, this is on the syllabus, but they're in 2 parts. So I want you to also to write your question, but to read other people's questions too, because actually they might give you a question that you say, my question was good, but actually what I'm writing about in my paper, they had a better question for that. I'm going to go and research that question instead. Right? Of course, you've got to hand your own in. Don't copy anybody's. But in terms of your research paper and the answers that you find to these questions, that's your own work, right? So you can choose to answer somebody else's question. That's totally fine. But so you've got to hand in an answer, right? Hand in a question. The second part that you're going to have to do for every question that you put in, you've also got to upvote one other question. And you won't get the points if you don't upvote. So you've got to upvote. The reason why I want you to upvote is because I want to see what the most popular ones are so I can address those. Because I figure that's the one most people are interested in. I'm going to address those questions, right, in my weekly videos. Okay, so you have to. So every week, every module, right, and there's 2 modules per week mostly. So every module, you're going to have to do one question. You're going to have to read some others and upvote one of them. For the research question. There's also a clarification question, which is separate, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But you'll have the same 2 steps for that. You'll write a clarification question, and my other video tells you about what that is, and you upvote one, right? Every module, right? So 2 modules a week is a condensed summer version. That's that. I think I've covered that kind of satisfactory. I've given you an example of what it might be like, what a question will be like, and I've told you how it will help you with your main research question. If you didn't understand any of that and you've watched the video a couple of times and you still don't know what I'm talking about, send me an email and I'll help you more on that, because this is the key to the course. This research question is really key. It's a key link between the big paper that we're handing in at the end and the small questions that we're asking every week. All right. So I'll leave it there for that. And again, any questions, email is the best way to get hold of me.